So my name is Bruce Smith, and I'll be co-presenting today with Richard Beer. And our topic is improving uptime through optimizing your CMMS. And so just briefly, my background goes back through mainly the food industry, but I spent 22 years managing maintenance, engineering, and facilities at a number of sites. And so over those years, I've had the opportunity to build maintenance departments from the ground up, build maintenance programs, again, from paper programs through Excel programs, through computerized maintenance management software programs. Excuse me. So I've implemented MP2. One site I've implemented SAP at a multinational site. So I've had real world experience with implementing and creating CMMS programs. And for the past 10 years working with Richard, we've been fortunate, literally coast to coast, helping companies optimize their maintenance programs, and in particular their CMMS. So I'll be co-presenting with Richard Beer, and I'll hand over the reins to him about halfway through the presentation. So the objectives of our presentation today are to discuss really what the S stands for in CMMS. And I think Richard alluded to that in that brief commercial. And requirements for your CMMS to actually improve uptime in your organization. So what does it take for your software to actually drive improvements, and how do you actually make that happen in your organization? So those are the topics we'll be covering today. And like I mentioned, Richard and I have had the opportunity to facilities across North America, and it doesn't matter whether you're in paper processing or I'm just saying, I know processing or aluminum extrusion or power generation. It doesn't matter. We see all the platforms when it comes to using a CMMS at the site and by the users. And the main one that we come upon is too much keyboard time. And some of these, actually during my presentation, you're going to hear some common themes that were brought up during the panel discussion. It was a very interesting panel discussion, and there was a lot of really good points brought up there. And one of them is this keyboard time, and actually getting maintenance staff to use the keyboard and put in what they do, actually enter their data. And from a maintenance mechanics perspective, I think the point was made earlier. I mean, these guys, are trained, skilled trades. Oftentimes, they go to school to learn to use tools. They don't go to school to learn how to use a computer. And so when it comes to at work, and they're expected to sit at a keyboard and type in all the work that they did, or in any population, there's going to be a group of people are resistant to doing that. It's just not something they want to do. From a management perspective as well, your skilled trades are typically already paid, and they're typically brought on board to fix. If you're measuring wrench time, you want these fellows to be out there fixing machinery. So if you walk into the maintenance shop and it's not an ideal situation either. So keyboard time is one of the definite challenges that a lot of companies face when it comes to getting information into the CMMS and getting useful data. And the old analogy, it feels like feeding a beast. One of the other consistency is there's a resistance to change, and that comes down to people are going to be expected to follow a certain work process, CMMS, operate effectively, or to get the data into this yellow work processes. And again, in any population, there's going to be people that don't want to do it exactly the way that it's supposed to be done. So resistance to change is another common theme. This leads to improper use, inconsistent use of your software. Improper mainly evolves through personnel change. So if people have left and you have new people coming on board, or just as you hire new people, if you don't have effective training programs in place, and you're relying on a train the trainer. In other words, trained by the guy who got trained by the guy who got trained by. You end up with a broken telephone sort of thing. And so people aren't, the new people that are being trained on using the software, trained with bad habits potentially. They're being trained maybe done the way they are. And that leads to inconsistent use. So people are not recording what they do in a consistent manner. If people aren't reporting what they're doing in a consistent manner, filling in some fields, not filling in other fields, you're going to get poor quality data. And getting that, having that discipline to have people follow these procedures, challenge. And all of these things lead to difficulty in getting any meaningful. The reason you have the software is to get information back out of it that's going to help you make it. So if you're not getting any meaningful reports out of your software, time, it's not helping you with your spending, it's not helping you with your OEE, not able to get anything out of it that's helping you make better decisions. So these are all some of the challenges that we consistently see across any industry. It's pretty much universal. And like we say, CMMS, computerized maintenance management software, whether it's asset management software or resource planning software. And it should be a tool, one of many tools as part of an effective maintenance program. So when we look at managing expectations of this tool, we can compare it to a number of other tools, like for instance, a piece of software called Duolingo. You know, you buy this software, you can expect you're going to be able to speak multiple languages. Well, you may be able to, but you have to consider the effort that goes in to learn those other languages. There has to be typically a reason or a motivation for doing that. There has to be effort, time. You know, there's a lot of the dedication. There's a lot of that outcome, and you don't just buy this software and expect you'll have these outcomes. And the same with just because you have this tool doesn't mean you're going to be able to build a house. You need to have, again, it's one of the tools, but you need to have the skill. You need to have the understanding of how this tool works, what this tool, the role of this tool in the whole process of building that house. So just because you have this tool doesn't mean you're going to have the outcome you expect. The analogy of race car, just because you have a car that goes fast and you're a good driver, doesn't mean you're going to be able to compete in NASCAR. Again, there's a whole host of factors that go into making a successful race car driver, whether it's, you know, stamina and knowledge and experience. And these are all factors that you want to consider when you're getting your software, because the CMMS is a tool. And so you want, just because you have a software program in process, or you have this process and the software in place, doesn't guarantee you any kind of results. To understand, you know, how this tool fits into your whole toolbox of strategies. CMMS, and one of these comments I think was made during the panel, typically most software packages offer track labor, parts, you know, all of these typical expectations from a CMMS, again, for analysis of report around spendings and breakdown, etc. That's all, you know, what we expect the software to do. But what this doesn't make your work disappear. It doesn't stop your equipment from breaking down. It doesn't solve your maintenance problems. You're still going to have equipment breakdown. You're still going to have problems with reliability. You're still going to have other issues on the shop floor. And it certainly doesn't make people have it. And I would not expect to see efficiencies going up, at least not right away, unless the software is implemented and you have a good history of data helping you make correct decisions. And it's not going to help you reduce your spending or your labor either, at least not right away. And in fact, most companies, when they put the software in place and actually start doing the work that they're supposed to be doing, you're probably going to see spending go up initially, because now they're spending money on doing things that they realize they should have been doing all along, especially when it comes to parts replenishment, those sorts of things. So what does a CMMS really do? Associated with your work processes. So work requests, you populate the software with your master data, and it'll automatically generate, well, from work requests to work orders. It'll track parts consumption. It'll generate requisitions, help you with planning and scheduling. Although I have to agree with some of the panel that can be improved upon. But that's the main purpose of the software, is to track all this and easily generate work orders. It'll help you generate requisitions for parts and all of the activities that are taking place, supposed to be tied to your KPIs. And if these report with your KPIs, they will drive your decision making, and it's that decision making that is going to make the improvement in your uptime. So that's really the supposed to take place with your CMMS to drive uptime. And it provides a centralized storage of information for all of your equipment and all of your assets, an asset registry. So if you need to know a model number, serial number, you don't have to go out in the plant and track down a piece of machinery or look through binders. Everything is there, from all the work order history, everything else. So it speeds up the process of finding all this information, getting reports, and getting information out. But the only way it can do all of that is if it's been configured properly up front. And when we sit down with clients and we talk about making improvements in their processes, we talk about how do you configure this CMMS and how do you consistency. And there's a number of data rules we emphasize with our clients, and information is one of the key ones. It's one of the first ones we talk about, and this is capturing information consistently. And so if we're going to hours, let's do it consistently on every work order. If that's something that we need to know. If we're going to capture parts consumption, let's do it consistently. Let's have everybody follow the same rules, the same way, and let's make sure we're capturing it on all the work orders. The naming conventions were all things on the shop floor, and oftentimes each plant will have its jargon. So if your software and you're looking at how you want to put name your assets or name your parts, we always recommend to use the local jargon we'll use on the shop floor. Because if you set up your use technical terms to call, when your maintenance mechanic comes to look for it, search the software for it, if you've got unfamiliar terms, they're going to have difficulty finding it. So use familiar terms, standardize your naming conventions so that everyone's using the same terms, equipment across the board. We always recommend a coding structure when you're entering your asset into the software, and your parts descriptions. So like a noun and a modifier. So everything would be all your list of pumps. It would be 1, 50 horse, pump 02, etc. A coding structure so that, again, we've seen databases with thousands of parts. The mechanic is going and he opens up the spare parts registry and there's 5,000. If he's going to look for a specific part and he knows there's a coding structure, it's very easy to search and to filter and to find that. So having that helps create ease for the users. When we set up our database and we set up location structures, or functional locations, we try to go to specific. So a good example here would be an HVAC. So an HVAC system could be comprised of air handlers and heaters and coolers and then you could funnel that down to an air handler, right down to an air conditioning system, right down to a compressor. So very specific. Most softwares are set up with what's referred to as a parent-child relationship, and this refers to the parent record. In case of order would be the parent record, and then you can attach multiple pieces of equipment. For instance, piece of equipment could have its own child record, could have its own child record. So the database is a way that you can create these massive webs of information, linking one thing to another. And it just makes it very flexible having this parent. We always recommend a database gatekeeper. This would be a person responsible for ensuring that the data rules are being followed. So one of the challenges is discipline to follow this and making sure that people put their right information on a work order. One of the fellows in the earlier session mentioned, the mobile solutions, so you can just use your cell phone, and that's, I mean, that kind of thing is great, but as long as there's a discipline to follow that process, and as long as there's, there's some consequences that are understood if you're not following the process. So having is always recommended. Somebody just a watchdog, making sure that people are following the database rules. Database sort just refers to when you're looking for something in a file and you sort your data. If you use leading zeros, for instance, if you have a number of pumps, using leading zeros in front of your numbering system ensures that the equipment sorts effectively. Garbage in, garbage out. If you're not capturing the data effectively, your reporting features are going to be questionable, weak, and unreliable. So the whole purpose of the CMMS is to provide you the reports that will tie into your KPIs that help you drive the decisions that will drive the uptime. So if you're not getting decent reports out, it's mainly because you're not putting the proper or accurate information. We always recommend backing up your database frequently, daily, weekly, whatever. That's typically an IT function. Talk about is resources, and resources are the people required to make all this happen. And the mechanic is doing the work, but somebody has to be creating the schedules, somebody has to be processing the work order, somebody has to be closing work orders, somebody has to be doing all of these things. So understanding the processes and understanding the resources required to ensure all those processes. They're all part of an effective maintenance process to ensure your software is going to be providing you the benefit you want. So what does it need? And when we talk about data, we talk about the right data, sufficient data, accurate data, consistent data. You're not putting in the right amount of information, you're not putting in, and you're not putting it in consistently, then you're not going to get out the proper reports. You're not going to get out reliable reports. You're not going to get out any meaningful reports that are going to help you make decisions that are going to drive or optimize your downtime or your uptime. I mean, and where the companies we'll be putting everything, we're filling every form, every field, we're getting everything. It's like you don't need everything. So when we say sufficient data, standardize your data rules, like minimum data standard required on a work order. And you don't necessarily need to fill in every form, because a lot of these CMMS forms have dozens of fields. You don't necessarily need them all, right ones, and with sufficient amount of data. With master data and the transactional data. So the master data is your what we call static tables of information, even though they're not really static, because your parts and your equipment lists will change as equipment becomes obsolete or you get new vendors, etc. So, but these tables are the main tables upon which all of your work is done. and all of the transactional data is applied to. So transactional data, the things that are happening, your labor hours, your equipment downtime, your reasons for failure, all of the things that you're tracking and reporting on, that will help you generate the reports. And all of this is captured on a work order. And the work order is really the guts of CMMS, because it's where everything happens. So the work order is equipment, the location, the time, the date, the people, everything goes on to here. And from when you close the work order, it's what drives your parts requisitions. If you consume parts, so that it will drive your requisitions for parts replenishment. As you track your labor hours, as you track your reasons for downtime, reasons for failure, all of these things will be compiled in the database that come out in your reports. And the reports, like I said before, the reports are tied to your KPIs, and your KPIs are where you're looking to drive your performance and your efficiency. So that's kind of sums up how the CMMS operates. To Richard, and Richard will take from here. There you go, Richard.
Yep, thank you very much, Bruce. Great discussion so far. Thanks again for having us. Bit about my background. I used to be with Toronto International Airport as the charge of planning, scheduling, dispatch. From there, I went to work for a software manufacturer and did software implementations, and then started TRO back in 2001. That's my background. In terms of CMMS and work processes, you think of your typical work management process, work identification, going into planning. We've put in here CMMS advantage of you can actually develop a work plan that's made up of your preventative maintenance program, your predictive maintenance program, your regulatory compliance, and actually auto-generate that work identification and pre-planning into what we're suggesting in the scheduling bucket. And we're differentiating scheduling from work assignment in that scheduling, when we worked at the airport, the dispatchers scheduled. So they would take the plan from the planners and they would put out a schedule in a week in advance. The supervisor was in charge of the work assignment of actually handing that work order to the technician that was going to work on that and execute that work. From there, you go to monitoring and documentation, and you have your closeout, and that's where your analysis comes in, and it needs to feedback and improve your both your work plan for the next time round and your work identification and planning process. So in other words, a consistent workflow process in your CMMS that is in alignment with your work management program, critical to obtain meaningful results. Okay, so from there, if you think of the complete system, as we said, the S is software, it has to be in alignment with people and processes. If you have the best in breed software and people are buying into the program, but the processes aren't in alignment, then you end up becoming inefficient. Same for if you have the best software and the best processes, but the people aren't buying into the program, then things aren't going to get done. So as a part of CMMS, there are many tools in your toolbox. You want to go from reactive mode to a more proactive approach. You also have to consider, your asset control and criticality, your preventative maintenance program, what's going to feed into your work plan. That's your reliability centered maintenance program. Well, how are you going to get predictive maintenance going? Are you going to have a condition-based monitoring program? What's your root cause analysis, your asset care program, etc. All these make up tools that are in your toolbox for CMMS. So CMMS is a tool to improve uptime, requires effective configuration of workflows that are in alignment with approved maintenance processes. Are you going to um, have work requests have to be approved, for example, before it becomes planned and into a work order? Accurate master data, complete and up to date. So what is your asset registry like? What is your item master look like? Are you keeping it current? And you need to have discipline to record consistent and sufficient and accurate data in terms of labor, parts, location, reasons for failure, corrective action. So are you able to, on a discipline report, record all your part transactions? If you do, your CMMS can compiles useful, accurate, complete historical data related to equipment failures, downtime costs, parts, labor, etc., but it requires the discipline to put that information in. KPIs, once you have that data in, can drive the behavior and decisions focused on uptime, because what gets measured gets done. Consistency is the key. So what you're looking for is consistency to capture data each time. So in other words, if you send out a preventative maintenance on a monthly basis, one technician does it 1 month, the other technician does it another month, how do you know that both technicians are doing it the exact same way? Because you want to measure the data the same way each time. And then you want to report and calculate KPIs the same way each time. What's for example, your rules of the game for capturing schedule compliance? Are you going to use the create date? Are you going to use the scheduled start date? Because your KPIs determine how you actually, what fields you're going to use in your CMMS. And then you want to share the data. You want to share what you're reporting on, your KPIs. I had one client where the maintenance manager had all these great charts, but hidden in his office rather than sharing it. And then ask the question, will this metric tell me if a process is working or not? Why am I measuring this particular measure? Most people, Most people use statistics the way a drunkard uses a lamppost, more for support than illumination. Mark Twain. So, question, do any of the following sound familiar to you? Lack of clear goals, visions, and objectives. As stated earlier, if without a clear vision and goal of what you're trying to achieve, then it becomes a challenge to actually determine what kind of software, what field usage you want to have, etc. Unclear policies. Is it going to be your strategy to have your storeroom personnel record parts on a work order, or is it going to be your policy to have the technician record the part on the work order? Lack of stakeholder buy-in. It takes everyone, all departments across the organization, to buy into this program of what you're trying to achieve. Inconsistent work processes. What are your workflows? One day it's going to be approval of the work request. The next day it's going to be a call to the technician. And the next day it's going to be an email. What is it that you're trying to achieve? Reduce staff or staff turnover. How are you going to deal with that? Do you have a documented implementation plan? And are you keeping that implementation configuration plan current? Inconsistent data collection. Sometimes we put in hours of downtime, other times we don't record hours of downtime. Poorly configured CMMS or improper use of CMMS. Poorly configured CMMS is, it takes too many clicks to get a work order out. Improper use, we don't record our hours of downtime, for example. Lack of or poor training. When's the last time you had a training refresher on any subject within your CMMS? Database review and audits is your gatekeepers controlling actual field usage, proper recording, proper usage of your coding structure. So, if any of these do sound familiar to you, your CMMS may not be as effective as it could be. So what do? We want to do an assessment of what our software is capable of, and are there any gaps with our objectives. We want to do a database review. Are we having an effective coding structure? Are we able to say that the asset on the shop floor I can easily find in the software, for example? That gets to your software configuration and integration. Are there integration points with your ERP software? Are there integration points with your material handling, your operations or production software? And then you have to make sure that your workflow is in alignment again with the business process. And then what are your KPIs definition? As I alluded to earlier, you really want to use those KPIs to drive behavior and determine field usage. And then there's the planning and scheduling piece. If you're bypassing planning and scheduling, you're in reactive mode. You're going straight from work identification to work assignment. And then the key to all this is training, right? It takes time to learn a new tool. It doesn't happen overnight. And then a part of the reduced staff over or staff turnover is, do you have a mentoring program? When someone retires, can they mentor or coach the person that's going to be taking over that role? Getting back to training. If you think about when you first learned how to drive a car, you were unconsciously unskilled and performance goes way down. Then you take the driver's ed manual and you become consciously skilled, but you're at confident true because now you know what you don't know. And then as you take the lessons behind the wheel, you become consciously skilled. However, performance is still low. It's the same with software and CMMS. You're consciously skilled, you're still at that training stage. And this is where a lot of organizations say, well, this didn't work. It's the flavor of the month, and we're going to go back to our old ways. Whereas if we take the time to get over the hump, then you become unconsciously skilled and your performance goes way up. So where is your organization in that training mode? In other words, races are not won by drivers alone. It takes the entire organization to make a CMMS successful. Otherwise, the statement of sure glad my part of the boat isn't sinking will be true. And think about we're all in this together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Richard and Bruce. That was a very interesting presentation. I think we have a couple questions here for you. Why is it that there are so many supply chain failures, and how do they relate to CMMS?
In terms of supply chain, one of the things I find is maintenance is its own worst enemy. When I talk about that work plan, you can actually forecast what your MRO requirements and supply chain requirements are and inform the logistics group what you require, and they could plan it out. If you don't follow the plan, then it becomes challenging. And the other aspect is, are there tie-ins between the supply chain and your CMMS? Bruce, you have anything to add?
No, it's just it comes back to discipline and following the processes. And what we find is many times they have great intentions about what they want the process, but actually having that process adopted is the challenge. So when you get a breakdown, this case, supply chain and CMMS, in my mind, it would reflect on how the discipline and if there's consequences for not following the processes that have been created.
All right, thank you, Bruce and Richard. I think we have time for another two questions here. So how can you create more buying when you're not in a position of authority? That's an
Actually, when I
interesting one.
first started my position at the airport, I was the lowest person on the totem pole. I had no managerial authority. I was just simply a maintenance planner. And buy-in takes time. Change does not happen overnight. It's a matter of changing culture. I was fortunate enough that I had a very supportive manager at that time. And so it was a rule of once around and up. And, you did your best to communicate what the requirements were and what we're trying to achieve. And if someone was not um, cooperative, then I had the opportunity to just raise it up a level.
Yeah, in my experience, I mean, there's going to be resistance to any kind of change. It doesn't matter who's implementing it, and there's ways of getting people to buy in. You have to be in a position of authority to have accept a change. But the easiest way is to really understand this. So if somebody just doesn't want to follow the procedure, I guess trying to understand, like, why are they resisting? Is it they're uncomfortable about something, or taking away some of their power, or are they feel maybe their role is not as valuable? Or, so understanding the source of that resistance, and then try to accept that, and then that angle. So what is causing the resistance, and what can we do to to fullness, or that threatened feeling, or whatever that source is. Again, you don't always have to be in a position of power or people adopt. Sometimes you can find, if you can have is a on your side somebody else who is like-minded and wants the same process. Maybe you can talk to this person individually, take them out of the work environment, talk to them on a personal level. We'll go for lunch or something like that. Just try to that it's really their resistance coming from.
And also try and put yourself in the person's shoes, right? What's in it for me is something we can all ask ourselves. Why are we doing this? And if you can demonstrate to the other person what's in it for them, you might be surprised at how they turn around and buy into what it is you're trying to achieve.
Yep, that's definitely a good point. I think we have time for one more question. How does training tie into making an effective CMMS?
Well, again, it ties back to when I talked about learning how to drive a car. It takes time to learn the nuances of a software, right? Although all the software platforms pretty much perform the same functions, each one does it in its own way. And so really taking the time, really documenting the steps that are needed and providing that training goes a long way in improving the performance of an individual user. If that end user does not get the training and does not have the opportunity to practice, then it becomes that much longer before you become efficient in that software. Right? It needs to come to the point where you know the software like the back of your hand. And that's where training comes in.
We have
And
one more question. Oh, sorry. Go ahead,
so
Bruce.
I was just gonna add to that is that I mean both Richard and I have been to a number of facilities to provide training, and 99% of the time the users that we're training have no real idea of the potential that the software has, and we'll explain the shortcuts like Richard mentioned, the nuances. We start talking about the process of work done, and we'll start training on those aspects. And it's very surprising how few companies have invested in work processes consciously standardized work processes. That's one of the things that when we're doing training, we also emphasize, and we map work process part of what we do, and we help clients really understand and it's done, how does that information get from here to there? And once then we can focus the training specifically on what you need to do to accomplish those tasks in the software.
Sounds good. I think we have one more question from the audience here. It says, I've noticed that many organizations struggle to fully utilize the functionality of their EBS EAM solutions due to misalignments between the system and business process. These may be addressed during the implementation by spending time and effort to develop customized solutions. These customizations are not often supported in the updates to the EAM and CMMS solution. How can this be addressed?
Okay, so if you're going to develop your own custom solution, then anytime, and even if you don't, even if you use the straight functionality, anytime the software is updated, we always recommend you have at least two environments. One is the training environment. Second environment would be the testing environment. And if you don't want to have the testing environment, you could always use the training environment. And then the third is your production. And especially if you're going to develop your own customized piece and add-on to the software, always test it out first in that training or / testing environment, and then ensure when there's an upgrade that nothing has been broken before you put it into production. I'm not sure if that addresses the question, so if it did, great. If I misunderstood, let me know.